Michael Winner's widow speaks on camera for the first time about her ordeal at the hands of a violent burglar.
Opened the door and then all hell broke loose. Michael would just be turning in his grave.
We'll reveal previously unseen CCTV of the prime suspect. Also, new clues in the murder of a retired primary school teacher.
We believe this person could hold vital information as to who Joy's killer is.
And the mystery of a body unearthed by workmen.
Somebody will know who this is. Somebody's brother, somebody's son.
Live for the next hour, this is Crimewatch. Good evening and welcome to the final Crime Watch of the year. We are live for the next 60 minutes with the latest crime investigations, news and appeals. Full reconstruction of that shocking raid at Geraldine Winner's home coming up in just a moment. But first, a brief rundown on what else we've got for you tonight.
We've got our latest collection of wanted faces. The lines are open, so get in touch straight away if you know where they are. Plus, some unusual CCTV coming up, which captured the voice of a violent pub robber.
Tip it off, tip it off.
Also tonight, a young woman waives her anonymity in a bid to catch the man who raped her on Boxing Day 11 years ago.
Now, you will probably recognise this man here. He is the late film director Michael Winner. Here he is with his wife Geraldine on their wedding day back in 2011. They'd known each other for over 50 years before they finally tied the knot, but sadly the marriage was short-lived, with Michael passing away just 2 short years later. Well, following his death, Geraldine, who's now 77, subsequently downsized from their mansion to a flat in Knightsbridge in London.
I was in terrible pain. My back was agony and my shoulder was agony. You can't believe it. You think, this isn't happening. It's just not true. It's just, I don't believe it.
Now this is 70mm and I'm opening something, I know what it is.
Michael Winner was 75 when he finally married 4 years ago. But his wife Geraldine had known him for a very long time before the wedding.
I met him when I was 16 and I've known him ever since. So that was like, 56 years.
But their marriage was tragically brief. Michael died less than 2 years later.
Our life together was fun. He had the most fantastic sense of humour. Underneath all his bluff, he was the most exuberant, incredible person ever. He was just like a little pussycat, And what I had with him is just wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Since her husband's death, Geraldine has lived alone. On Friday, the 9th of October, she was getting ready to go and visit her 2 sons.
I finished packing because I was going to Paris the next day. Thinking of all the different things I had to do. I'd been to the bank, actually, to get some extra money, get some extra euros out. I'd managed to organise everything. I was all calm and settled, and I just literally had to get into bed, go to sleep, and get up the next morning.
Shortly after 10 p.m, Geraldine was about to turn in for the night.
I saw there was a few newspapers, so I thought, I'll just put those outside the back door. Opened the door, and then all hell broke loose. You can't believe it. You think, this isn't happening. It's just not true. It's just, I don't believe it. I went to grab her hair to bash her if I could, and it was a wig, came off in my hand. But I was fighting. I was petrified, but at the same time I was, you know, I wanted to get rid of her.
Get out of my back!
I went to grab the kettle to hit her with the kettle, and then she grabbed it out of my hand and hit me on the head. She hit me so hard I saw stars. But I had curlers in my hair, rollers, and I think that saved my head, but she caught hold of my forehead twice, and that's when it started to bleed. And that's when I thought, right, I better stop fighting now because I could end up dead. She hits me harder.
While Geraldine lay helpless on the floor, her attacker made sure she wouldn't cry for help.
She put her foot on my back, pressed very hard and said, "Shut up. Don't make any noise, otherwise I'll kill you." She said, "I'll knife you," actually, that's what she said. I'll knife you.
Geraldine's hands and feet were bound with cable ties. And then she was blindfolded. For the next 3 hours, Geraldine lay there, while the intruder meticulously cherry-picked her way through the apartment.
But she asked precisely for money and the jewellery. I told her where the money was, the money that I was taking to Paris. I kept hearing her zip up this bag. She obviously had a bag that she was putting everything in. I heard her zipping that up from time to time and unzipping and zipping. With my hands behind my back, yeah, I was in terrible pain. My back was agony and my shoulder was agony. And I'd broken my finger. I saw my finger was broken. I'd seen that. You just, all you want is for her to take what she wants, to go. Just go. Just leave me alone. Go.
But the ordeal wasn't over yet.
She suddenly asked for a specific piece of jewellery, which was in the shape of a heart. So I gave her the number of the safe, of course. It was a little heart that Michael bought for me. You know, well, nearly all that jewellery, the monetary value was not what counted. What counted was the memory of it, the sentimental, that it was Michael that bought it for me.
It was after 1 in the morning before the burglar finally made her exit, trying to remove all evidence of her identity as she left. The attack has left its mark on Geraldine.
I feel vulnerable. It's just made me realise that there are really evil people in the world. It's the trauma of what's happened to you. If I wake up in the middle of the night and are terrified somebody's going to hit me on the head again, I now need somebody in the spare room. That's all there is to it. My memories with Michael and everything I've done with Michael, nobody can take that away. And that's all really that matters. And Michael would just be turning in his grave. He would just be turning in his grave.
Terrible. Well, we're joined now by the officer who's leading this investigation, who many of you may well recognise as DCI Jane Corrigan, a long-standing friend of the programme, and we welcome you back tonight. Vicious, calculating, very worrying.
Kirsty, this was a horrendous attack that lasted for 3 hours. Mrs. Winner is a really strong lady, but actually this attack has really taken its toll.
We should let people at home know that the security arrangements in Geraldine's flat have now been completely changed. I mean, it's so unusual, surely, that this was a woman?
I've never encountered an attack where a lone female has, one, committed such a vicious offence, but also I can't understand what the motive is behind this attack.
You have got, Jane, some it's interesting, highly relevant CCTV. Let's take a look at it. Just explain to us what we're taking a look at.
So this is the woman, and we can see that she's in a disguise. So walking down the street, she's wearing a wig and a floppy hat. But we know when the wig was removed, she actually had short strawberry blonde hair. She's about 5'7", white, and is described as having an Eastern European accent.
So that's how she looked when she was out on the streets of Knightsbridge. Tell us where she went.
Well, she's actually taken quite a long route to get to the address, and she spent hours there. So we know she's entered the premises about 7:30 on the night, and when she's left about 1:15 in the morning, she's taken this long route all the way to Kensington High Street.
So we know that she was there for a good long time and helping herself to a good lot of stuff. Take us through the sort of, I suppose, the most distinctive or significant items she took.
Well, she's asked for the heart-shaped pendant. We don't know why she's asked for that. But the attacker might have kept it, or maybe you've seen her wear it, or maybe she's tried to sell it on. There was also a diamond-encrusted Cartier watch with a nice bracelet. And we also had some earrings, again, diamond earrings, anchor-shaped.
I mean, these are all very beautiful, but we saw there in the reconstruction something she took which wasn't particularly valuable and not that beautiful.
Yeah, the kettle. And again, that might be something, because it's large, she's tried to dispose of it quickly. So maybe one of a street cleaner has maybe found it in a bin.
Jane, it's worth viewers knowing tonight there's a whacking reward here.
There is. We've got a £10,000 reward leading to an arrest and prosecution of this woman.
OK, DCI Jane Corrigan, thank you so much for updating us on this case. Really a horrific ordeal for Geraldine, especially after losing her husband Michael so recently. So if you can help, I would urge you, please, to call us now. It's the usual number, 0500 600 600. Detectives are standing by for your calls.
A roundup of crime news now, beginning with the latest this evening that radio DJ Neil Fox has been cleared of sexually abusing fans and colleagues. The former pop idol judge, who's 54, had always denied the 10 allegations which related to 6 women. Mr. Fox, who's been off-air since his arrest in September 2014, broke down in tears as the verdict was read out in court. Outside, he said it had been an arduous journey.
I strenuously denied all of the allegations, and today I have been vindicated. It has been a long, hard and stressful 14 months though, and a lot has been said and written about me in that time that over the next few days, weeks and months will need to be addressed and rectified.
The defence started today in the Hatton Garden jewellery heist. The burglary in April was the biggest in British history, netting some £14 million for the gang. The jury has previously heard some of the stash of stunning jewels, gold and gems was buried under graves. 4 men have already admitted conspiracy to commit burglary. 4 others deny involvement in the raid, and the trial continues. Well, Crimewatch has previously covered stories of drugs being smuggled in rugs and hidden indoors. Now, 1.5 tons of compressed cocaine have been discovered disguised as wooden pallets and charcoal. The seizure was made by the National Crime Agency and Spanish police on a shipping container travelling from Colombia to Valencia at the end of last month. 11 people have been arrested. Now it appears the Grinches have stolen Christmas trees. That is, police in Manchester have today released this CCTV footage of 3 offenders stealing trees from a shop in Chorlton in November. 190 trees were taken in 2 separate raids by the men who loaded them onto their van before fleeing. They have seriously got some baubles. If you recognise them, do get in touch. And finally, a mum has said thank you to a burglar for stealing thousands of pounds worth of items, including Christmas presents, from her home in Leicestershire. 27-year-old Alexandra Majuri, who's also pregnant, wrote a post on Facebook thanking the burglars for making her feel the real importance of Christmas. She said the loss of things like her television meant they've talked more as a family, but their young son believes the gifts were hidden by an elf. Poor lad. Well, let's hope the police aren't so forgiving when they catch up with the burglars.
Now, here's a question for you. How do you solve a murder when you have no idea who the victim is? That's the challenge facing Thames Valley Police after human remains were discovered in Bracknell back in July. Well, tonight we'll be exclusively revealing a potentially significant breakthrough in the case. But first, here's what detectives know so far.
On the 24th of July, workmen clearing ditches in Bracknell made a gruesome discovery.
Boys, you better come look at this.
Buried in a shallow grave was the skeleton of a man.
Skeletal remains, by its very nature, would suggest it's been there some time. The difficulty with this case, which is really unusual, is we didn't know who this person was, where they were from, how they came to be there. It's crucial to the investigation to identify the person whose bones were recovered. There's a little bit of a domino effect once you've got that victim identification. You get lots of lines of inquiry that will help you identify who they've been mixing with, who their associates are, who their family are. And you can build that wider picture of who that person is and what they've been involved with, which may well lead you to a motive and then to who's committed this crime. The bones had been wrapped in bin bags, and then again in a blanket. And the only item of clothing that was on the remains was a jumper. No other clothing was found with the body. The post-mortem revealed that the male skeleton had received injuries to both sides of his temple. These were catastrophic injuries caused by what's called blunt force trauma, so hit with a heavy object. We also found that the male had a broken nose, and we also were able to tell through the anthropology that the male was probably around 5'9" to 5'11" tall. That he would have been of a stocky build, and that he would also have had some form of trauma to his lower back that his friends and relatives or maybe associates would have known about. Further from the work that we've done that was matched with the dentistry was that we're able to establish that an age for this gentleman was probably around about 30 to 40 years of age.
One distinctive feature forensic teams found were the veneers on the victim's teeth.
The gentleman had a very healthy set of teeth, actually. He didn't need the veneers, they were there for show. They're quite expensive veneers as well, and he had 7 done, which is a very unusual figure from the dentistry world. Of those 7, one of those had been repaired. The work itself could have been private or NHS, probably carried out within the UK, but may have been carried out in Europe as well.
We actually used his tooth and sent it to a DNA specialist who extracted DNA from the tooth, and from that we've managed to get a full DNA profile. We've searched upon our databases, but unfortunately haven't matched it to an individual at this time.
With no DNA match, the next step for detectives was to send the remains to the Royal Berkshire Hospital for a CT scan in order to create a 3D image of the skull.
It's very rarely used, but on this occasion it was going to be the only way we were going to have a possibility of getting a picture of that person. Of course, once you've got a picture, you've got something that the public can help with.
The scans were sent to Dr. Christopher Rinn, a professor at the University of Dundee, who specialises in facial reconstruction.
We got the CT scan of the skull, and we can use computer software to convert that into a 3D model. And there's this armature that's attached to the computer, and you can move it in 3D, and it has haptic feedback, which means that you can actually feel the skull on screen. the first thing that we would do with the skull model is to add the tissue depth pegs that represent how thick the facial soft tissues will be on average. And then we use anatomical sculpture to fill in the gaps between the pegs and estimate the muscles of that individual skull. The position of the features relative to one another is quite important, and that's dictated very definitely by the skull, except for the mouth. So what you find is that the eyes and the nose are more accurate than the lip shape. We can't tell things like skin tone and hair colour and eye colour from just the skull. If that's present at the scene, then it's a different matter, but just from the skull, we're good at estimating face shape.
It's very unusual to use these skills, but we can see from the results that the professionalism and the expertise is well worth the strain.
From the CT scan of the skull to the facial reconstruction, detectives now have a picture of what the man may well have looked like.
He has quite a strong brow line where his eyebrows are, and that's very distinctive and would have been distinctive to anybody that knew him. Matched with the dentistry, he would have had this smile, which would have been very, very white, very noticeable. So in those terms, facially, he's got quite a distinctive face. Somebody will know who this is. It's somebody's brother, somebody's son, maybe a father. That person will know instantly who this person is. The facial reconstruction, for us, is a pivotal piece of the inquiry. It's given a face to that missing person. And I believe the public will be able to tell us who that person is and identify them. And that will take our investigation a big stride forward to identifying the people that have committed this crime.
And Detective Chief Inspector Kevin Brown is with me now in the studio. Goodness me, that was a very, very fascinating report. Of course, there's lots of information that you want people to help you with tonight. Would it be fair to say this is a very unusual case?
It is, Kirsty. It's very unusual. It's very rare to have a murder investigation where you don't even know the identity of the victim. And because we don't know that, it's very difficult to piece together how the victim was murdered and who they were murdered by. So that's why we need the public's help. Right.
Now, what wasn't included in that fascinating film was that there has been, well, I was going to say an important breakthrough. You need to tell me. It sounds important to me. Tell us what's happened.
Potentially very important.
Right.
We had the DNA, as you saw in the film, and that was sent for international comparison. And that's come back with a partial family identity match with a lady from Lithuania. Unfortunately, the lady's passed away in May this year, so inquiries to that direction are quite difficult. However, we do know that she reported her son missing in 2008. So tonight we're revealing a photograph of her son.
Right.
His name is Ivorus Danilevicius. Now, he came to the UK in 2004, and we know very little about him since that time. He does have some similarities to the facial reconstruction.
Very even face, yes.
He does, but I can't say they're one and the same person.
Right.
So I really do need to know some information about Ivorus.
Now, as well as that part of the equation, there is, of course, who killed him is a very important part of it too.
Yes, if anybody has any information around who killed, if it is Ivorus or anybody else, how they killed him, why they killed him, and why the body ended up in Bracknell, then any information to that end will really help us. And the focus of our inquiry really is threefold. One is the facial reconstruction. Who is that person?
Yes.
And not forgetting those veneers that we covered in the film.
Yes.
Very unnatural, very bright white. Somebody will know those. And secondly, Ivorus, we need to know where he was in the UK, who he's worked with, who his associates are. Any information around him will be taken and used in the investigation. And thirdly, any other information around how this person came to be murdered and ended up in Bracknell. That will help us piece together the murder investigation.
Yes, it's drawing together all these strands that's then going to enable you to plot it through.
Absolutely.
DCI Kevin Brown, thank you very much for taking the time for talking to us tonight. If you know anything about this man or how those remains came to be buried in Hawthorne Lane, then call the usual number. You know what it is, 0500 600 600. OK, still to come tonight, the new search for a potentially crucial witness to the murder of retired primary school teacher Joy Hewer.
We believe this person could hold vital information as to who Joy's killer is. We've managed to trace everybody else who entered and exited the building except this person.
But we've got wanted faces first, starting with Elvis. Elvis Andrews, that is. Although he also calls himself Elvis Rutherford, Ian Rutherford, Eden Andrews, or just Aaron. He's 56 and failed to turn up at court, where he was due to stand trial for a number of child sexual assault charges. He walks with a limp and often has a border collie dog with him. If you're in Northern Ireland, Nottinghamshire, Surrey, Kent or London, keep an eye out for him, as he has links there in particular. Next is this man, Yannick Baptista, although he also uses many other names. He was due in court on drug dealing and money laundering charges, but has gone missing. Baptista is 25 and has links across Hampshire to Manchester. He's described as dangerous, so don't approach. Just dial 999 if you know where he is. Number 3 is Mansouri Talar Ghanom, but he too uses other names. Detectives want to question him in connection with the rape of a woman in Reading in June this year, and also for immigration offences. The 37-year-old is originally from Iraq and has links to London. Finally, for now, is 29-year-old Joseph Richardson Eaton, or Paul Jenkins, as he sometimes calls himself. He failed to turn up to Preston Crown Court in connection with an attack on a man, which resulted in the victim losing the sight in one eye. He has friends and family in Lancaster, Bolton and elsewhere in Greater Manchester. If you know where any of tonight's faces might be, please do get in touch using the numbers on screen. We'll go through the rest of the lineup a little later, and they're all on the red button until midnight.
20 years ago, the body of 52-year-old retired school teacher and avid churchgoer Joy Hewer was found in her flat in Walthamstow in northeast London. She'd been sexually assaulted, stabbed, and then her home had been set alight. 2 decades on, and her killer remains at large, but with new clues and your help, he can be caught.
Murder without motive. The killing of a woman who hadn't an enemy in the world.
A tape recording of a man's voice may hold the key to the murder of a woman.
Joy Hewer was a quiet, religious woman.
His body was found in her burnt-out flat.
I love to talk about Joy. She was my sister, and she was a thoroughly decent person. She was very caring, very gentle and kind. She was a loyal member of the family, a devoted daughter to our parents, doting auntie to the children.
I remember being really excited to see her. Every time I saw her was as exciting.
She'd always get the train up from London to come visit us, and my mum would never tell us when she was coming, so pretty much every time we'd go to the train station we'd be like, do you think it's Auntie Joy? Do you think it's Auntie Joy? Like, it was, yeah, she was just such good fun.
I always think of her very especially when Christmas comes round, because she loved Christmas. She was like one of the children. She was great, great fun. She was absolutely the life and soul, really, of Christmas.
Joy Hewer was a devout Christian who, after retiring as a primary school teacher, dedicated much of her time to the church. She often volunteered here at St Mary's in Walthamstow, helping to run soup kitchens, doing office work and cleaning.
Joy would very simply have said that her life centred around Jesus. That was her life. When you arrive as a new vicar in a parish, as I did in July '94 here at St Mary's Walthamstow, some people avoid you because they think you're busy settling in, or they think the vicar's too important to come and call on. But one of the very first person to call on me was Joy Hewer.
20 years on, Paul Butler, now Bishop of Durham, still has fond memories of Joy.
She was just a sheer delight of a person who never wanted to harm or hurt anyone. All her life was about helping other people and encouraging other people.
Joy also volunteered at the London Healing Mission, at the time a church in Notting Hill. She'd been there on the day she was killed, and left at around 3:30. She popped into a chemist before making her way home to her flat in Walthamstow.
When will you be back?
Joy then settled in for the night, calling her brother and speaking to her nephew. It would be the last time her family would ever hear from her.
Give me a call. Lovely. Thanks. Bye.
At around 10:15, a young couple who lived below Joy were getting into bed. Firemen arrived at Joy's flat to find her already dead. It quickly became clear it wasn't the blaze that killed her. Joy had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times in the chest. 2 fires had been deliberately started in a likely bid to destroy the scene. In doing so, the lives of the 55 others living in the building were also put at risk.
All our lives completely changed. Our world changed that day. It was the most devastating thing that can happen. Imagine for my parents at that great age to receive that news, that their daughter, their firstborn, their eldest, has been brutally murdered for absolutely no apparent reason.
The hunt was on to find Joy's killer, and police turned to Crimewatch.
In our next case, someone not only murdered, but then tried to cover up the evidence, set fire to a flat.
Well, certainly, Nick, I'm delighted.
Officers received a number of calls, but none with the crucial information they needed. With no murder weapon recovered or witnesses to the attack, police had little to go on, and 20 years passed without justice. But last year, after renewed appeals from her family, detectives began re-examining the case. Susan, we know that Joy was last seen coming into this building, but that's one of the few things that we do know. In all those conversations with family and friends, all the statements that you've read through, you really now do believe that Joy may well have known her killer.
Yes, as you can see, there's an intercom system, so there's every chance Joy would have had to have buzzed that person in that evening. On her own front door, she had a spy hole, which family tell us she would always use before opening the door. There was no sign of forced entry, so we do believe that she was familiar with the person that she opened the door to.
One thing the passage of time has given you is better technology. There's a CCTV camera up there, which on the night of the murder was facing towards these doors. From that camera, you've taken an image and been able to enhance it, clear it up. What have you got?
We have this image. It is still quite grainy, but this is of a person entering the flats at 10:30 the night Joy was murdered. We believe this person could hold vital information as to who Joy's killer is. We've managed to trace everybody else who entered and exited the building except this person, so we would very much like to trace him. If you recognise this person or you are that person, we would like to eliminate you from our inquiries.
When you're little and you hear this has happened, it's a huge, great, scary monster that's come along and snatched this person away and attacked him in the worst possible way. So in your head, they're terrifying. I need to look that person in the eye and I need to see that they're just a human.
To have my grandparents pass away without finding out what happened was really hard for them. They actually had my auntie during the war, so she was 2.5 before my grandpa ever met her. He was away fighting. I remember him telling me about it, you know, coming back and having this daughter, and you know, they lived through so many hard times, and I just don't think that they had any peace.
You took away my favourite person. You took them away, and then you got on with your life. And I'm cross, and I'm sad, and I'll never give up, and now's the time. It's been 20 years. Admit what you've done. Come forward and give us some answers. The pain will always be there, but we need to know now. It's time.
The killer took away their favourite person. Horrendous. Well, DI Susan Stansfield, who we saw in the film, is leading the investigation. She's joined us this evening. Thanks for coming. Tell me what you know about the person who did this.
We know very little about the person. What we do know are Joy's movements that day. We know that she came home at 6 p.m. that evening, and she made a few phone calls to family and friends, the last one being at 9:45 p.m. We then think the next person to see her was her killer. The neighbours downstairs heard noises, as we saw in the reconstruction, and that was between 10:30 and 11 p.m. The fire brigade were then called at 11:18 p.m, but when they arrived, Joy was already dead.
As we do know, in the reconstruction, we heard this emergency call, this 999 call. The person who made that call has never come forward.
No, they haven't. The call was made from a phone box in Fulbourne Road in Walthamstow, and they haven't come forward. We would very much like them to come forward. They could hold vital information for us.
We should remind people, it was 20 years ago, of course. That was Tuesday the 17th of October 1995, as you say. It was about 11:18 at night. I mean, it's pretty distinctive. We're going to just give you a chance to have one more listen to that call. We want to see if anybody recognises themselves. Maybe it was you, or maybe it's someone you know. Just take a listen.
Hold on, let me ask someone. Okay. I'll ask someone. Excuse me, mate. Do you know the name of this street? Walthamstow Town Hall, just around the corner there. Yeah, Walthamstow Town Hall. It's in the junction of Wood Street.
So if you are either the caller or you are the person at the bus stop, then do please come forward. We also saw you showing, now it was a pretty grainy image, but this is an important image. Just tell us more about this, would you?
This is a man that's seen entering Joy's building at about 10:30 on the night that she was murdered. He's a white man.
Right.
He's aged about 30 to 40 at that time. He had short hair and he was wearing a light-coloured jacket. It is a very grainy image, but we think if somebody was close to him, they'd be able to recognise him, or if you were that person, you'd be able to recognise yourself.
I mean, he is very significant because it's the case, isn't it, that everybody else who went through the door that night and was captured on this CCTV has since been recognised?
Yes, they've all been eliminated except this one person.
Susan, there's a reward here. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, we're offering a £20,000 reward for any information that comes in that leads to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Joy's murder.
OK, DI Susan Stansfield, thank you so much for updating us on this very significant case tonight. It's dreadful, isn't it? But with your help, it could be solved. Please, for the sake of Joy's family, you heard from them tonight directly, if there is something that you know which could help, get in touch. It's the usual number, 0500 600 600 for the studio. Well, still to come tonight, the Boxing Day rapist who has evaded justice for 11 long years.
It's always held me back emotionally because it's always been in the back of my mind that this has happened and it's always there.
But first, let's just catch up now on what sort of calls are coming in so far. This is DCI Jane Corrigan investigating the raid at Geraldine Winner's home. Lots of calls coming in. The phone lines are buzzing. What's the latest?
We have had a number of calls, particularly about the jewellery, but I'd really like to know more about who this woman is. We've seen the CCTV. She's got strawberry blonde hair, Eastern European accent. Somebody will know who she is.
And Jane, what about the heart-shaped necklace? Just how significant is that in the investigation?
Well, she specifically asked for that. We've got information about the watch. I'd like to keep those calls coming in, but where is that heart-shaped necklace now?
And also, there are other items on our website.
There are indeed. We've listed details of the paintings, so we'd ask viewers to have a look at the website to see if they can help us track down any more property.
And it's also worth pointing out to our viewers as well, there is a substantial reward.
There is. There's £10,000 reward for the arrest and prosecution of this woman.
Jane, for now, thank you very much indeed. Please keep calling.
More wanted faces now, starting with Patrick O'Brien. The 25-year-old was jailed for 6 years and 9 months in May 2011 after an elderly woman was knocked to the floor and robbed on her front doorstep. He was released from jail on licence but has failed to stick to his conditions and is now wanted back in prison. He has links to London, especially around Paddington and the West End. Number 6 is this man, Paul Michael Price, although you may know him as John McCarthy, Stephen Bracknell or Darren or Lee Price. Detectives want to question him after £20,000 worth of biscuits was stolen from a factory in South Wales. He's 38 and has a Liverpool accent, with tattoos of the names Jordan Ray and Jodie Lee on his right arm. He's described as dangerous, so don't approach him. Next is Adra Asher Ethan Mackenzie. He's 28 and was jailed in April last year for over 2 years for drugs offences and released early on licence. But he's breached the terms of his release and is now wanted back inside. Mackenzie often works as a barber and has links to London and Manchester. He has a tattoo of the name Mariah on his left shoulder. He also shouldn't be approached, just call 999. And finally, this blurry image is Alan Christopher Simpson. He couldn't sit still for this photo and he isn't hanging around for police either. Simpson was jailed for just over 3 years for burglary offences and released on licence, but he hasn't stuck to his conditions and is now wanted back in prison. He has a large nose and a 1-inch scar above his lip. Simpson has links to the Wirral, Liverpool and across Scotland. If you know where any of the faces are, then get in touch using the numbers on screen. You can take another look on the Crimewatch website and they're all on the red button until midnight. Well, time for some CCTV now, and we start with an appalling attack from this time last year. Be warned, there are some graphic images coming up. It's 2 days before Christmas 2014, and a man is being dropped off by a car in Romford. He walks to a nearby house with what looks like a delivery, but it's something far more sinister. You can see here, he's hidden a knife under the package. He knocks on the door and tells the homeowner he has a parcel for her. He waits, and when she opens the door, he lunges for her, slashing her across the face a number of times. He then runs off, back down the drive, leaving the young woman with lifelong injuries, which are too horrific to show in full. Who is this violent thug? There's only one place he should be spending Christmas: behind bars. June this year, and this elderly couple are waiting at a bank in Dunstable in Bedfordshire. They withdraw £300 in cash before moving to a nearby table where they pop the money in the woman's handbag. What they don't realise is they're being watched. As they leave the bank, these women start to follow them. They trail the pensioners through street after street after street, until just out of sight of the camera, police say they took the cash from the woman's bag. The pensioners then desperately drove around hunting for the cruel thieves who'd made their getaway. Tragically, whilst at the wheel, the elderly man suffered a heart attack and died shortly after. Who are these despicable women? This worker is cleaning before opening at a pub in Nottingham in August. She has no idea there's a man lurking around outside, with his face completely covered. He hides from the camera before sneaking inside the pub. As the woman carries on cleaning, he grabs her from behind and holds a knife to her throat. He drags her behind the bar. You can see the knife clearly here. Listen carefully now. As he forces her into a back room, his threats are caught by the camera's microphone.
Everything.
Terrified, she empties almost £9,000 from a safe into a bag he's brought with him.
Zip it up.
Stuffing his pockets with more cash, he leaves her, petrified, on the floor.
Stay here till I've done it. Yeah? Don't move.
Now, he might have been masked, but someone will recognize that voice. Let's call time on this vicious robber. Who is he? A Sunday afternoon in Leeds, this man is taking money out of the cash point as he rocks his 8-week-old baby to sleep in her pram. But the man in the tracksuit bottoms lurking behind him seems agitated. He suddenly grabs the young dad by the throat and demands the cash he's taken out. A kind-hearted couple intervene, and the robber flees, falling over in his haste to get away. Distracted, the dad lets go of the pram, and as it rolls away, the couple come to the rescue again. Who is this cash machine cad? Name, please. Now, take a close look at this man. He goes into a supermarket in Kilbarchan, west of Glasgow, on a Saturday evening in February. But he's not interested in groceries. He just wants cash. He holds a knife in his right hand and passes a plastic bag to the man on the till, demanding the money. The worker hands it over, and the robber calmly walks out. Detectives believe the same man is caught here on CCTV exactly 2 weeks later in nearby Johnston. This time he walks into an off-licence, and in a copycat robbery, armed with the knife and with the plastic bag in his hand, he demands the takings. Recognise him? You know what to do. Shop him. You can take another look at tonight's faces and CCTV by pressing the red button on your remote. And of course, it's all on the website. Call and text the numbers on screen if you can help.
Now, I think you might find these numbers pretty shocking. The latest figures show that more than 19,000 adults and almost 10,000 children reported being raped in the last year, and that's just in England and Wales. And of course, behind those truly appalling numbers are the individual people who've not only had to go through the trauma of the attacks, but the aftermath of reporting the crime and, of course, trying to come to terms with what's happened.
It never crossed my mind what was coming next. It just felt like when you're in a dream and you feel like you're trying to escape, but your body's not doing anything, you're not going anywhere. It felt like a really long time that he was kind of holding me down and threatening me and saying that he had a knife and that I needed to stop screaming.
Kaylee was 17 when she was raped. It was Boxing Day 2004 and she was on her way home.
He's local to Wednesbury in the West Midlands. He's aged 17, 18, maybe 19, something like that. And on Boxing Day...
We featured her case on Crimewatch at the time. Back then, Kaylee's identity had to be protected, but now she has decided to appear on camera and talk about what it's been like for her, knowing that her attacker has never been caught.
Just felt really ashamed. I just felt like it was somehow my fault for walking home alone, so I just didn't want people questioning me about it, so I just avoided bringing it up.
To help people like Kaylee talk about what's happened to them, many will come to centres like this one in Nottingham. Known as a SARC, or Sexual Assaults Referral Centre, it provides support for people who've been raped.
Coming here is a massive step for people. What we're here to do is to give that listening ear, someone to talk to, and someone to help them understand what they're going through.
As well as offering independent counselling and support, the team can also gather vital forensic evidence.
We do have up to 7 days window to gather forensics. That forensic evidence could be stored whilst they make a decision whether they want police involvement or not.
If the police do become involved, the centre also has video interview facilities to record victim statements in a less formal environment.
Before we get started, I'm just going to double check in with Laura that she can see your account cameras before we cut anything off.
Yep, Amy, the visual and the sound is fine.
The centres say that they provide an invaluable service to the victims who come through their doors.
It's really about making sure that people are feeling as secure and safe as possible, and it's away from a police environment and it's away from a clinical environment.
Working alongside the police are teams known as CSI, or Crime Scene Investigators.
One of the first calls we get from the rape team is to ourselves, one of the duty managers, to say that there is a rape, there's an allegation, and that they're going to try and identify a scene.
This is a crucial part of any police investigation, and the evidence these forensic specialists gather often supports rape convictions.
When we get the call to the scene of a sexual offence, there's a whole variety of different priorities that we've got to think about. We would always carry out general photography at the scene initially, just to record what's there and the locations that things are in it. We would also be looking for if there's anything that's been left behind, either by suspect or victim. If the scene's outside, then we will need to get there quite quickly and make sure that we're preserving what's there. If the scene's in a premises, then potentially we can lock that premises and wait for the interviews to occur.
Whether it's a murder, whether it's a rape or it is a burglary, processes are exactly the same. The assessment of the whole scene becomes so important, and can't rule anything in or out, because the day you do that is the day you make a mistake.
If you've got any ideas who did this, perhaps someone you know in Wednesbury who came home covered in mud on Boxing Night? 0500
Well, despite the Crimewatch appeal and police investigation, Kaylee's attacker has never been caught.
It was always like I was sitting on the edge of a chair waiting for that moment that they would say, OK, there's been a DNA match. And it's always held me back emotionally, because it's always been in the back of my mind that this has happened and there's no way I can close the box and move on, because it's always there.
Kaylee has recently been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Her one wish now is that detectives find the man responsible.
Part of the PTSD is that I cannot get closure, and that's the reason why I've really struggled getting through the day-to-day and struggling with my relationships, is because I simply cannot put it behind me, because it's always there. And to get someone and to finally have it end and see an end to the whole thing would simply allow me to actually move on with my life and build a future that I can really look forward to.
Very courageous young woman. Well, 11 years is a long time for Kaylee to still be waiting for answers to who attacked her. She describes this man as being 17 to 20 years old at the time, so he'd now be in his late 20s, early 30s. He was wearing dark clothes and he spoke with a local accent. Full details, descriptions are on our website, and officers working on the case are here in the studio tonight, so please do get in touch using the numbers that are up on the screen. It's worth knowing that there is a new Crimestoppers reward of £5,000. Or you could call them anonymously if you'd prefer. 0800 555 111 is the number to do that on. Also, if you yourself have been a victim of crime, you can always call the Victim Support Line. Their number, it's 0808 16 89 111. Right, so it's time to update you on some previous cases now, starting with an appeal that we featured in October after a 21-year-old woman suffered a terrifying rape in Toxteth in Liverpool. The victim was walking in the early hours of Sunday, the 19th of July, after a night out with friends when she was attacked. Well, I can tell you now that 2 weeks ago, detectives arrested and charged a 25-year-old man from Birmingham in connection with this attack. He's been remanded in custody. We will keep you updated with how the case progresses.
Now, in April, we showed you CCTV of this despicable thief caught on camera going into a hospital in central London where he stole a bag containing a laptop and a phone belonging to a patient who was actually in surgery at the time. You will no doubt be pleased to hear that this man, 53-year-old James Cleary, has now been convicted of 4 hospital burglaries, including that one. He's been sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Finally, as it's our last programme of the year, we thought you might like to know that this year Crimewatch has featured 116 appeals and there have been 72 arrests so far, with many more expected in the coming weeks and months.
Yes, we've had 28 convictions for offences including murder, rape and robbery.
As a result, criminals are spending a total of, you're going to like this, more than 184 years behind bars. If you weren't sure what a difference your calls make, now you know.
And we've had some more excellent calls tonight, which hopefully will lead to arrests. Let's start with that reconstruction we showed you of the aggravated burglary at Geraldine Winner's house, of course, the widow of Michael Winner. Well, we've had a lot of calls coming in, particularly focusing on one item of jewellery that was taken, the very distinctive Cartier watch with that beaded strap. Of course, we want more calls on the other items. We've also had calls on the woman that was seen in the CCTV. Lots of calls come in. We want more on those, of course. The Bracknell body, this unidentified body at the moment, we've had a possible name, of course, Ivorus Daniel Vicious, but we've had other calls giving possible names. That's very exciting news. And Elvis Andrews, one of our wanted faces, we've had possible sightings on him. Great stuff.
Thanks, Martin. That's everything for now, but please remember, do take a look at the Crimewatch website where you can find all of tonight's appeals. You can also have another look at those wanted faces and the CCTV. That's all on the red button, available until midnight tonight. Our phone lines, well, they stay open until midnight tomorrow, and we'll be back with an update after the news tonight at 10:40. Viewers in Northern Ireland are going to have to wait until 11:10. We will, of course, also keep you up to date with the latest developments via Twitter. You can follow at BBC Crimewatch. Thank you so much for all of your calls so far. They really do make a difference from the whole team. We'll see you for the update in a while. For now, bye-bye.